Before we get started, if you love shivery fairy stories, I really think you'll love my novel, The Ghost of Nothing. It's got that same haunted, magical, eerie vibe of this channel, but turned up to 11. It's available as an audiobook, ebook, paperback, and hardcover. Honestly, it's the best thing I've ever created, so if you like what I do and you haven't read it yet, I really think you're missing out on a special experience. Links are in the description. And now, on to the stories. This happened in Utah, deep in the woods, maybe a half mile from the hairpin turning road. I'd been sitting there for what felt like hours, so long that the forest had forgotten I was there. The animals had returned to their daily routines, moving about as if I were just another tree or boulder. Birds flitted through the branches above me, and deer wandered close enough that I could have reached out and touched them. There was this one doe who'd been gazing barely an arm's length away for the longest time, completely unbothered by my presence. It was like I'd become part of the forest itself. But eventually, I started to get the feeling that I wasn't the only person around. It was like I was being watched. It's hard to explain, but it was like I could feel this strange presence that did not feel animal. I looked around and saw movement about mid-high up in an aspen that held still. I scanned the leaves where the movement had taken place and suddenly made eye contact with a person. I was looking at what I can only describe as a young adult with skin like the aspen tree he or she was sitting in. It had inky black hair in a short, clean bowl style where the bangs were blunt and came low almost over the eyes and transitioned to a ring all around their head. It also had inky dark eyes. This being was thin, muscular, not a shred of fat on the body, but healthy muscles like a wild thing has, wiry and close to the body. Its skin looked like the aspen's bark. I don't recall if I said something, but I maintained eye contact while moving cautiously to the side for a better vantage point, and to confirm it wasn't a trick of the light or something like that. As I shifted, I could see that this person appeared to have either wings or a cloak that also resembled the aspen's bark, and branches in color and texture. It was smaller than a person, but not tiny. I guess 3.5 or 4.5 feet if standing on the ground. It was positioned with feet hugging the trunk, knees bent up, almost tucked into armpit and wing, sort of squatting there. As I moved to observe better, the aspen being moved as well, only slightly. Then it seemed like it was startled. It had an expression of genuine surprise at being seen, and then quickly panned around the back of the tree and disappeared. I looked around but could see no more sign of it. For the record, I was completely sober at this time. Completely. I don't know what to make of the experience. My silence and stillness had brought out other forest life too, as if I wasn't there. The animals had stopped noticing me, or at least seeing me as a threat they should be aware of. So maybe this forest being had done the same thing. Just to be clear, this was a corporeal experience, not angelic or alien or foreign, not a vision or a hallucination or imaginary experience or a sense. I saw this thing in flesh and blood. It moved the leaves. It looked at me, like a squirrel, but not a squirrel. The being was very surprised to be seen by me, that was obvious. I think it preferred not to be seen. I think fairies are nature spirits, tenders or owners of places in space and time. I was driving with my wife and two kids in the car on a country road in Scotland when a thing that I presumed was an autumn sycamore type leaf flew across the road. I wasn't paying a lot of attention until it stopped in midair, right in front of the windscreen. I realized this thing wasn't a leaf. It looked like a very wee human with wings. It was all the same color, an orangey pink. The wings were in two parts like a butterfly, and it was naked, skinny, and looked male, although I didn't see any genitalia. The top of the head looked elongated and flat across the top. It put up its hands, crossed in front of its face, which looked panic-stricken, like someone would if you were about to hit them with your car. It all happened in a split second. I couldn't stop the car in time to avoid it, but I didn't hear or feel an impact, so don't know what happened to it. It was just gone the next second. I haven't told anyone this before. Nobody in the car was paying attention. We had been out for a long drive. They were all chilling, listening to various tech devices. I don't know what that thing was, but it wasn't an autumn leaf. It couldn't have been. It was in the middle of the summer, for one thing, and leaves don't have bodies and faces and arms and expressions, etc. I did some searching online and found the supposed skeleton of a fairy. It looked fake to me, but it was the closest thing I'd come across to this creature I saw. I've never believed in them. Still don't, really. But the experience was weird. It looked like a very wee human with wings, and I don't know what else to say about it. I feel quite guilty that I might have hit it with my car. I hope it was okay. When I was young-ish, maybe 10 or 12, I was alerted by a rustling sound at my window. Since I was in the upstairs bedroom and there were no trees close to my window, I found this a little odd. I turned around to see that it was simply dried autumn leaves, maybe 100 or so, blowing in the wind. It was a bit of a spectacle, so I looked more closely and was quite shocked to see that maybe 40 of them were in fact not leaves at all, but pixies. Your typical Victorian variety, with wings and clothes that appeared to be made of dried autumn leaves themselves. One of them, a boy I recall, put his wee face up against the glass and shielded his eyes to have a better look at me. I was delighted and alarmed at the sight. Eventually, they all just flew away. It may seem funny and backwards to some, but as a child, I was pretty much an atheist. You couldn't tell me anything magical had ever existed. But after experiences like this, by the age of 21, I was a practicing witch. This happened in Missouri. I had just taken a shower and walked into my room wrapped in a towel. I sat on my bed getting ready to dry my hair when movement outside the window caught my attention. My curtain was open, but there was a large tree outside that blocked my view of the street. I looked at the tree and saw that there were little men walking in a line across a branch toward my window. One by one, they took a small leap from the branch to the windowsill, and from there they jumped down onto what I assume was the water meter next to the house, right under my window. I couldn't wrap my head around what I was seeing. It had to be a trick of the early evening shadows, I told myself. I leaned forward to get a closer look. My room was tiny, so I wasn't far from the window at all. And still, I was clearly seeing small men, about 8 to 10 inches tall. They were wearing what looked like Lederhosen. They all wore hats, too. The hats were very strange. They looked like boxes made into poorly designed hats. And I do remember seeing a couple of them with their arms up, like they were balancing their hats. So I now, in hindsight, wonder if the hats were actually boxes that they were carrying on their heads. I could see ratty hair sticking out from under their hats or boxes. They had knobby knees and old-fashioned type hobnob boots on. I don't remember seeing socks. They looked like little German men in Lederhosen. I began so frightened I wanted to run for it, but I didn't want to draw attention to myself. They acted like they couldn't see me, though I don't know how that's possible. I felt the fear of seeing this getting so strong, and then the next thing I know, I'm waking up at the end of my bed with this towel still around me, and it's totally dark outside. I think I may have fainted. I don't know what they were, but I just assumed they were of the fairy realm. I think fairies are citizens of this planet just like us, only not harmful like us. Good morning. I have decided to pass along my story, something I've only told a few people. I've lived my whole life in a very rural part of Pennsylvania. Farm country is the best way to describe it. I did not have a superstitious or paranormal upbringing. However, I do enjoy paranormal shows and such, so I'm open-minded. I come from a law enforcement background, and I currently work in law enforcement. One morning, I saw something. I instantly knew what it was, but also couldn't explain it. I was driving down the road passing a dairy farm where there's cows out in the field. There are cornfields all around, and it was in the fall. So I was coming down the hill where there's a little wire fence, a drinking pond for the cows. When I got to that point, what looked like a giant dragonfly flew up out of the little drinking pond area right past my windshield. I got a perfect look at it. I slowed down almost to a stop. It didn't pass right in front of me, but instead it got to where my windshield was and started to fly ahead of me in the same direction I was traveling. It was a lime, neon, translucent green color. It's the best way I can describe it, with 4 wings at least. I couldn't make out any kind of detailed features except that it looked like a little humanoid. It definitely wasn't a bug, and the color wasn't natural for a bug or insect, rather. I'm not an expert on insects, but I do collect arachnids and arthropods as a hobby, so I believe I would have been able to recognize if it had been an insect. The being never acknowledged me, looked at me, or anything, but continued to travel down the road in the direction I was traveling for about 20 yards. I grew up in this area. There used to be woods for as far as the eye could see, but now there are houses where the forest once was, big houses. It flew toward a stop sign and then completely vanished. I don't mean it landed on something. I don't mean it hid behind something. I mean it hit that point and then was gone from sight. I couldn't pick it up. I stopped. I jumped out of my car. Then I walked around, searching everywhere, but could not find it. Later, I decided to do a search on YouTube for fae sightings because that's what I believed it to be, but didn't know anything about the topic. That's how I found your channel, and I've enjoyed your channel ever since. I've only told a handful of people about this, and that was my immediate family, wife, and 2 teenage daughters. I haven't seen anything like this again since, but it did intrigue me, and it brought me into the world of the paranormal. Since then, I've gone on ghost hunts at very famous sites in Pennsylvania and other stuff like that just to scratch the itch. I wasn't scared when I saw the fairy being. I didn't feel uneasy. I felt as if the being didn't even realize it had broken into our plane of existence, as the best way I can describe it. I think it didn't even notice my car, didn't notice anything else going on, and then completely vanished about 20 yards down the road. That's my story. It's 100% true and factual. I saw a fairy. It couldn't have been anything else, just based on the way it appeared, the color, and how close I was. It wasn't late at night. It was about mid-morning in an area that I was very accustomed to. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. I came across your channel by chance and was delighted to see a space full of experiences that go beyond the rational. I found myself thinking, this is the best place to share 4 random events that to this day could potentially be explained, but maybe the people who follow this channel will see the magic in them. Event number 1. When I was 11, I was walking around this huge birch tree nestled in the lower tier of our garden. I was fortunate to grow up with sprawling forests that surrounded my family's little gem of a cottage. Usually the pet dogs would accompany me on my walks. On this day, I decided to walk alone. As I walked, I started to notice that it was eerily quiet. Not even the birds were singing. As I walked around a birch, I glanced to the right, my periphery catching this strange little sharp light. As I turned to face it, this big ball of light flew past my face, inches from my nose. I was stunned. Then, as fast as it had arrived, it had gone. I read in the evening that sometimes light diffracting through forests can make orbs, big bounding balls of light as clear as day. Yet when I really think about it, within the core of the orb, it oddly looked like it had the shape of a human silhouette. But it passed by so fast I can't be certain if I just imagined it. Event number 2. This is poorly titled on my behalf. This is less an event and more an observation. Across from the cottage woods where I live is an adjacent forest that leads out into a sprawling field. The grass is particularly rough with hard blades that are pointed. They're always so bothersome to walk through, yet the dogs always seem to bound their way through it effortlessly. So I was walking the dogs after school and found myself by a small stream that cut through the field. It was always a welcoming sight, bubbling away with soft splashes. The dogs loved to jump in and race through it. I was tracing the water's edge with my feet while pretending I was singing to a sold-out concert, as per usual. Then I noticed something a bit out of the ordinary. Someone had carved a finger's width of a path from the stream to a little spot nearby, within that hellish, godforsaken killer grass. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to follow this tiny path. Right away, I realized that the path had water pouring through it, as if someone had created a slight detour from the stream. I covered my hands with my sleeves so as not to cut myself on the swinging blades of grass below me. Then, as I approached a little sparse section, there was a hole dug into the ground. This is what I observed. The hole had been dug a sand bucket's width and depth. The walls of the holes were padded till smooth. Rounded pebbles had been stuck into one side of the hole like a little stairway down to the bottom. At the bottom, the hole was filled with tiny pebbles. From the right side of the hole, that little path from the stream converged, spewing drips of water. That trickling bit of water served as a little waterfall, falling into the hole, pooling at one side. I could see by the stairs at the bottom of the hole were these little acorn caps that were turned over and filled with water. To me, it looked like something very tiny had diverted the stream with a little path, dug a hole, put stairs in the side, and then collected the water in tiny nut caps. To this day, it's one of the most wholesome and delightful things I've come across, but sadly, no sightings of little people collecting water. Event number 3. This one could perhaps be explained as a sleep paralysis incident, but I'll share it anyway because I feel it relates to the other experiences. So, when I was a teen, I had this awful bout of sleep paralysis, probably brought on by the social pressure to pass all my exams in order to get into higher education. I would wake, my eyes stuck in one position, unable to move, unable to make a noise, just stuck in a shell of myself. And yet I was fully aware of my surroundings. The worst part of it was the accompanying visual nightmares projected onto the real surroundings I would find myself stuck staring at. One night, I had woken up completely paralyzed, full muscle lockdown. My eyes were open, looking around the room. This wasn't my first sleep paralysis incident, so I knew what was going on, which helped calm me down somewhat. Then my cheeks started to feel wet. My eyes moved up, and standing right over me was a large black dog, drooling on my face. It had a thin frame, kind of like a shaggy Irish setter, but bigger. It had this uncomfortable-looking, rusted iron chain around its neck. Its paws were pinning my arms down. It bared its teeth, snarling at me, but I still couldn't move. I just had to watch this dog looking as though it was about to tear my face off. My head was stuck at an awkward tilt, and glancing down, I could weirdly see past the right side of the dog. Behind him, at the end of my bed, was a man. He was tall, but what made him really frightening was the fact that he was balancing on the end of my bed on his bare toes. He had this awful grin, teeth whitish but stained brown in the corners, and really defined laugh lines. His head was oddly squat, as though it had been pressed down slightly, making his brow really pronounced. He was clad in white and brown striped clothing, with specks of ivy poking out of the cuffs and the collar and the pockets. I vividly remember his hair. He was balding, but seemed to have long, slick hair at the back, with a greasy quality to it. He looked so pleased, as though the dog causing me discomfort was entertaining to him. Now, usually I couldn't hear anything when stuck like that in sleep paralysis. It was like the muscles in my ears were locked down with the rest of my body. But this time I could hear. The man spoke. He said, "Nice to meet you." And with that, his grin grew to a horrible length, some of his teeth protruding over his lips. The drool from the dog kept spilling onto my face. I looked at the dog, its features much softer now, as though its aggression had passed. Then I realized the man had moved. He was by my ear now. He said softly in this little broken croon, "Little un." Then he did this minor chuckle, and that was that. I woke up completely, my eyes passing away from the nightmare. And I was alone in my room, clutching the sheets. Event 4. I will start by saying I have a big fear of doppelgängers. The very notion of running into your exact replica is haunting to me. This is probably brought on by some traumatic experiences I had at school. You see, there were these two identical twins in my year who would pretend to be each other sometimes. They would prank people, one acting nice and the other acting mean, trying not to be seen together so they could swap roles. And that always stayed with me. But I digress. On this particular day, I had just woken up. Walking down the hallway to the bathroom, I could see the hallway window, which looked down onto the garden. There in the garden was my mom. She was just standing there, her back turned away from me. She was in this colorful patterned dress, her hair in its natural ponytail. It all seemed perfectly normal, and I didn't think much of it. I walked into the bathroom and started to brush my teeth. I glanced at the bathroom window. A leaf or two were stuck there against the pane. It was really windy outside. I could see the trees' leaves shaking. I looked down, and strangely, my mom hadn't moved from the spot I had seen her standing in before. She was still just standing there, looking at the same direction. Something unnerved me about this. The way she was so rigid. She wasn't moving or shifting weight from one leg to another in any way that was natural. She was just still. That wasn't what really scared me, though. Everything in the garden, the bushes, trees, and grass, were moving because it was windy. But not my mom. Her hair, her dress, it was all perfectly still, not affected at all by the wind. I had this horrible feeling. I walked out of my bathroom a second later, and I saw my mom walking down the stairs, facing away from me in that same colorful patterned dress. I screamed and completely jumped into the air. What I was seeing was impossible. My mom was outside in the garden a second ago, and now she was inside walking down the stairs. I called out, "Mom," but she didn't acknowledge me. She walked downstairs and off to the kitchen. As I came downstairs rather sheepishly after her, I peered into the kitchen. I was rationalizing on overdrive, telling myself I must have imagined my mom in the garden, and she must not have heard me just now when I called her name. I called out to her again. "Mom!" I said, and walked into the kitchen, but she wasn't there. I ran around searching through the house, but there was no one home. Then I heard the front door click. I turned, and there was Mum, dressed in her purple anorak, holding 2 shopping bags, her hair down, styled from a recent trip to the hairdresser. She could see I was just staring at her, confused. I said, "Did you just get back?" And she nodded mockingly, holding the shopping bags. "No, I'm on holiday," she said, and walked past me into the kitchen. I told her what I'd seen, and she said it was all very strange, but put it down to the fact that I had just woken up. Likely some prolonged dream. To this day, I'm absolutely terrified I will see my mom's doppelganger again, just standing somewhere in that patterned dress, facing away from me, not moving, just there, nearby. So that's it. Those are my experiences. Thank you for reading. And for all those who may have listened to these events, if you have had similar experiences, I want you to know you're not alone. Thanks for watching, and a huge thank you to everyone who submitted their stories for this one. Let me know your thoughts on these stories down in the comments. If you like these sorts of fairy stories and the atmosphere of this channel, you might enjoy my novel, The Ghosts of Nothing. It's about a girl from a haunted town that turns out to have more than just ghosts. Fairies are working behind the scenes. The very world of the novel has weird rules and dangers that are based on my research into fairy lore. It's available as an audiobook too, so if you prefer to listen rather than read, you should definitely check it out. I hope you'll also consider it as a Christmas gift for the fairy or magic lover in your family. For a chance to win a free copy of the audio version of the book, you can subscribe to my newsletter. Every month, I randomly select a subscriber for this free giveaway, and it's completely free. You just need to sign up. The link is on my website and in the description. If you have a story of your own, I'd love to hear it. You can submit your fairy experiences through the form on my website, where you'll be able to also find the mailing list sign up and always to find me on social media. A huge thank you goes out to all my supporters on Patreon, as well as everyone who's joined the channel, made a one-time donation through PayPal or Ko-fi, or subscribed to my newsletter. Your support keeps this work going, and I appreciate you all so much. If you'd like to support the channel, all the options are in the description below. The stories in this video came from subscribers and the Fairy Census, so a big thank you to everyone who submitted. These stories were edited for dramatic effect, but if you'd like to read the full census stories, you can follow the link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please comment, like, share, and subscribe. If you're new, that always helps. It helps the channel grow and others to find it. And don't forget to hit the bell to receive notifications of new videos. It's actually best to hit the bell now because it seems like YouTube doesn't really notify people unless they've hit that bell. So please do remember to do that. And until next time, this has been a visit from your scary fairy godmother.